So I'm here with Salman Rajput, and he's the director of SI Capital, which is an independent stockbroker based in Godalming in Surrey. Now, he has a vast array of experience across financial services, having worked on the London Stock Exchange, Bloomberg, and with many high net worth and ultra high net worth private clients as well. And he's been a stockbroker for the last 12 years, and he now helps his clients with a variety of ways in investing in stocks and share, ISAs, pensions, you name it. And so many, many more. So welcome, Salman. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Yelena. Great to be here.
Wonderful. So when we first spoke, you told me about your family and your siblings, and that your brother is an ophthalmic surgeon and your sister's a teacher. So I know lots of people talk about being entrepreneurial from when they were quite young. Where did it all start for you?
So actually, if I'm honest with you, I'd love to say that I used to sell sweets when I was 5 and I had a very entrepreneurial streak from the beginning. But actually, I think it was more of an evolution from being an employee at a large firm, then being an employee at a small business, and then becoming self-employed. And I think it was just very much an evolutionary process for me.
So did you sort of grow up here in Surrey, or what was your childhood like, and your sort of background coming up to university and all that?
So I grew up, actually, I'm a South London boy, so I grew up in South London, sort of near Streatham, and came from a first generation immigrant family, worked very hard. My parents weren't particularly wealthy, but parents sent us to private schools. So I went to Emmanuel up to GCSEs, then Whitgift School in South Croydon. After that, I went to uni, Queen Mary, studied economics there, did a master's in finance. And then from there, it just all started from there, really. So then LSE, spent a little bit of time at Bloomberg, and then sort of around 06, 07, moved into the private client world.
So really, you were still figuring things out as you went along and doing what you enjoy, rather than
absolutely. I think I was very absolutely I'm sure, like, obviously there's certain courses like yourself where you're fairly clear from pretty early on that you're going to be a dentist, in some capacity. Okay. Whereas with me, it was more, okay, I know I'm going to be working in the city somewhere, but, I'm sort of fairly open. And actually, it's almost good to have that view, because actually you need to have 2 or 3 different roles in different firms, because actually in your early working life, you're actually learning things you're good at, what things you enjoy doing, and what things you kind of want to get into. So I think it kind of makes sense that it was almost my 3rd role where I was starting to home in and sharpen up as to, okay, I'm good with people, I'm good on the phone, I have a finance background, now I need to move into sort of stockbroking. So I was starting to home in on what my strengths were.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to be, isn't it? I'm amazed at people that, you sort of get given the choice, don't you, when you're young, what you want to do, and you don't know what colour top you're going to wear, let alone what you want to do for the rest of your life. So yeah, I completely see where you're coming from. So to someone that doesn't really know, what is financial planning?
It's a big area, to be honest with you, and I mean, how long have you got? Okay, so it's a big area, but I think ultimately financial planning is a little bit of what it says on the tin. It's really a case of taking a long view of your life, where you are, where your family, and what are you looking to achieve? What are your objectives? How much risk do you really want to take? Are you in tax efficient products and wrappers? I mean, it's a huge area, which, it requires quite a lot of discussion, quite a lot of time, and back and forth conversation with the client, to work out something that they're comfortable with, and then everyone works towards that plan.
And it's the risk, isn't it, that you really have to decide, because not everyone has the same level of risk, right?
100%. I mean, to be honest with you, most people in general fall into the low to medium risk. And especially with a new client, even if the client actually says to me that I love taking risks and blah, 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 whatever, I'd still be very careful with that person, because, the most important rule in financial planning, in finance, whatever you want to call it, is there's three very important rules. Number one, do not lose money. Number two, do not lose money. And number three, yep, you guessed it, do not lose money. The client loves you when you make money, but they absolutely loathe you when you lose money. So actually, you are generally always going to be more reverting to a more, medium risk at best kind of portfolio. Plus, you also have to accept and understand that if we're talking specifically about healthcare professionals in general tend to have a very similar risk profile to accountants, which is lower risk, because that's, you're not taking huge risks in your profession. So most people will generally be, especially in these.
Right. Sorry, you just broke up there a second. So I know I did mention a couple of the services that you provide. On a sort of daily basis, what do you tend to do?
So I suppose at the moment I'm actually quite busy, because we're at the beginning of a new financial year. So it's really a case of the new ISA season, the new junior ISA season, and I only learned this myself over the weekend. But there's been a big change in the junior ISAs. So last year, junior ISAs the allowance was 4.12k. They've more than doubled it now to 9k. So that's quite a big jump. And what that's really saying is that the government is encouraging parents to save for their children for the long term, and they're supporting you by doing that in a tax efficient way. So I think that's quite big news, and I've actually just relayed that just this morning to my clients, and I'm hoping that they come forward, and obviously take up their JISA allowances for the year ahead.
I think a lot of the time people focus on what the government might be taking away, and it's really important to focus on what actually the government is giving to you, because whenever they do take something away, let's take an easy example, Section 24, right? But yet there are the areas which it doesn't apply to, which you can still have opportunities. So it's important to speak to someone like you and get that understanding, right?
Sure. I mean, look, it's funny. I speak to lots and lots of people, and not everyone even is fully aware of ISAs, excuse me, and what ISAs are, what the allowance is. So there's still a lot of awareness, I think, that needs to be done. And I think it's a wonderful initiative by the government. I mean, let's say a family of four, for argument's sake, you can now save what's that, 58k in a very tax efficient way per annum, which is quite useful.
Yeah. And is it just private clients that you deal with now? So is it just individuals, or do you work with businesses as well?
It's a very good question. I mean, we do have the or limited company, or so where you've got an entrepreneur and he would rather do it through the company rather than as an individual. So I suppose in that sense we are taking on companies, but really ultimately it tends the relationship is always generally with an individual, whether it's in a personal capacity or in a company capacity.
Yeah. And so when why would someone just tend to use your services? Is it that they have a problem, or are they more looking to add something to their portfolio, or like what are the general kind of problems and solutions that people want?
I think it's a whole variety of reasons. I suppose in a little bit like yourself. Sometimes people are coming to you for a general checkup, for a general chat. Maybe they've moved area and they need a new dentist, but it could be anything. With me, it's a case of sometimes I'm having to fix problems. So where they've had a bad experience and they've said, look, I'm completely burnt and whatever, and I need someone to kind of restore my confidence a little bit and to work, sort out this mess, for a better word. Sometimes it's completely new, clean. They're just looking for someone and they've been, I've been referred. So it can be a whole host of reasons. There's either starting out, or they already have an existing person, but they're just looking to kind of diversify a little bit and just, have a different, a different opinion on things. So it could be a whole variety of things.
Yeah. And do you think some of those problems could have been prevented?
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, there are bad apples in every industry. Okay. Sadly, financial services will always have probably per 100, probably more bad apples because of the nature of what we do. The fact that you actually are dealing with money in some shape or form, will always have more bad apples. But there are, and unfortunately, so let's say if you've got 5 naughty people per 100, unfortunately, it gives the other 95 a very bad name. The other 95 are actually just trying to do a good job for their clients, and trying to play the long game. I've always believed that you should play the long game. If you do the right thing for the clients, they will be happy. They are more likely to refer your services if they're happy and they're seeing performance. So I've always playing the long game.
Yeah, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because you lose your trust in people. So I'm sure it takes a lot longer to build that back up again.
Yeah, and actually, it's very true. Also, what they say, that it takes a lifetime to build trust, and it takes half an hour to lose it. So it's these are challenges that people in my profession and other professions. It does. The whole game is based on relationship and trust. So it's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. So let's say someone comes to you and they have some cash set aside and they're thinking, I want to dip my toes into the market, but I don't necessarily want to do it myself because maybe they don't have enough knowledge, they don't have the experience. What would a typical sort of journey be like working with you?
So I think the first thing is I'd sit down with the client, find out, just try to get to know them a little bit, try to understand them a little bit. But then I'll tell them about myself. I think the first thing that I would probably do if they've literally are novices is actually to steer them towards the tax efficient products that are already there. So the ISAs. So, even if you can't take up your full allowance, because obviously the full allowance is 20K for an ISA, just take up as much as you can, because at least it's tax efficient. So it's then free from income tax and capital gains tax. And then from there, it's really a case of, okay, I suppose in general, typically when I take on a new person, I'll probably either go down the route of funds. Okay. So get a feel for them. Are they looking for growth? Are they looking for income? Are they looking for a bit of both? Or it would be blue chips. So for example, your BPs and Shells that are good quality blue chips. They're giving you a yield income of 6-7% per annum. And in good years like now, you're more than likely over the next sort of 12 months or so, you're probably going to see good growth,
And is there an element of teaching as well and giving them a little bit of knowledge in terms of what they're doing? Because I'm sure many people probably come to you and they've maybe watched some videos or spoken to their friends at the pub and they've said you need to invest in this, or maybe you need to go and invest in cruises since they're so cheap right now. So I mean, what would you sort of give your guidance as well, telling them what and why we're doing things as well?
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of teaching involved. I mean, it's actually my role, when I kind of break it down or when I really think about it. Actually, you're doing a little bit of everything. You're doing a little bit of teaching. You're doing a little bit of, let's say, if something's gone wrong, or you are dealing with someone that's had a bad experience previously, you're actually doing a little bit of psychology and therapy. You know, so there's all sorts of different things going on. But yeah, I mean, look, for me, I view every person as someone that I will probably be, or hopefully be, on a journey with for the next 15, 20 years. So I don't mind putting in that effort, and even the client appreciates that as well, because at the end of the day, if they knew what they were doing, they probably wouldn't be coming to me. Okay. So, you know, the whole point of coming to me is, so I'm absolutely happy to do that. And it's quite nice. It builds a relationship of trust. And I've had, excuse me, I've had people that after a few years have actually said, look, thank you so much. You've completely opened our eyes to this world. I've learned so much from you. Do you know what? I kind of want to kind of carry on this journey on my own. And I'm absolutely, for me, I feel very happy to hear that. I mean, obviously, I'm disappointed that I've lost a client and I've lost that relationship. But at the same time, what that tells me is that I've probably almost done too good a job, because they kind of really understand everything now, and they kind of want to play the game, if you like, or play the markets and that kind of thing on their own. So ultimately, it's good to hear. That means I must have done a good job.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a testament to you that people are now confident to be able to do something themselves without your help. Now, I know we mentioned problems in what can happen in the past. I mean, what are, for healthcare professionals, I know you've got experience working with them, what do they tend to come to you with?
Well, I mean, I think in a lot of cases they've kind of they've already probably bought something, and sadly, more often than not, it's not worked out for them. And so they're just like, okay, well, I tried it didn't work, whatever. So in a lot of cases, it's just a case of, look, you've got to, you see, the biggest thing in this industry is actually, it's the mindset and temperament. Unfortunately, most people, they tend to do the exact opposite of what the professionals are doing. So right now, most people out there are too terrified, and are probably, if they've got anything, they're selling it. But the professionals right now are buying. So this is the problem. It's, you buy when you least want to buy is the best time to buy. And when things are going swimmingly well, that's when the professionals are actually starting to take money off the table, and that's when the general punter is starting to start buying. So this is the fundamental problem, and actually if you just change that cycle and change the mindset of someone, then you're already onto a winner. So with a lot of sort of retail favorites that are on various bulletin boards, these oil and gas companies, natural resource. The thing is there's a big spike, and then you have a lot of retail investors jumping on board. But again, like I said, the professionals at that time, they're taking the money off. So unfortunately, it's the retail investors generally that are left holding the baby. This is the thing. When I start this conversation with them. Sorry, I'm just getting texts and everything on my phone as well. I think it's a case of rebuilding trust, explaining that, look, there's actually a lot of money to be made here. You can make a lot of money in a safe way over the long term. But I think there is a lot of it is mindset. I think people think mistakenly that you can come to the markets and you can make, you get rich quick. I mean, it doesn't happen, you know. If it's too good to be true, it usually is.
Mm. Yeah, that's a powerful saying, and I don't think enough people listen to it, because there's so much going around at the moment where people just expect to get rich quick, and it's so easily accessible, isn't it, for us to see those images of people, sipping cocktails on the beach and in their millionaire mansions, and yet it might be green screen or whatever it might be. So I think that's an important message, I think, that we really need to convey to everyone, and just to, however much people don't want to hear it, because everyone wants to look at the brighter side of life. It doesn't happen overnight, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, so I suppose when you're working, you said that you can invest in quite a safe way, and things still do go wrong, right? I mean, is there any fallback? Are there any safety nets? How do you sort of mitigate risk, or does it generally not come to it?
It's a good question, good point. I mean, absolutely, things do go. I mean, look, for example, who could have predicted Corona? Okay, I mean, a global pandemic. So, in a time like this, a black swan event, actually, you know what? Everything gets smashed. Everything, whether it's a black smashed. How do you mitigate? So I think the best way to mitigate in these circumstances, or just in general, is actually diversification. That's the key. So you invest across different sectors. I would say actually you should be investing across different regions globally as well. So that you mitigate. So for example, anyone that was very travel and hospitality sector heavy, unfortunately, they're left with, not a lot, because we know that these sectors have been hurt very hard by the lockdown. However, if you had Just Eat and Ocado, you've actually done quite well in that. So, the point being is actually at all times to have a fairly good wide exposure. So in certain areas, you may get hit hard, but then in certain areas you've probably done well. So overall, you might not even be that worse off. The other thing, there's another very, very key point, is something called cost averaging. Because the key is, the very, very important thing that I get across to my clients, potential clients and clients, is you're investing for the long term. Now, over a long term, let's say 5-year period, 10-year horizon, you're more than likely you're going to make money. Okay, you'd be very unlucky to not make money in that period, because you're going to benefit from the compounding from dividends, for example, the income, which we will then obviously reinvest back into the portfolio. There will be times when we will have shocks. I've seen more than enough shocks now. I mean, I lived through the financial crisis. We then had the Greek crisis in 2011. We've had various bits, but now we've had the pandemic. I've seen shocks, but actually, if you've invested sensibly over a 10-year period, you're still going to be up. And the very important thing here is this: cost averaging. It's very important. So let's say, I'll give you an example of this. In 2010, one morning, I came into the office, and BP, and we're talking about BP had halved in value. I was like, what the hell's happened here? It was the Gulf Horizon oil crisis, okay? I was like, bloody hell. So essentially, anyone that had BP on paper at the time was nursing a 50% loss on paper. That is incredible for a stock like BP. So I looked at that and thought, okay, this does look like, once I'd sort of seen what was going on, it looked like a market overreaction, because the market does overreact both on the downside and on the upside. So the following day, I bought more BP. I didn't sell anything. I bought more BP. So clients got 50% paper loss. The following day, we bought more BP. Now, the good news is BP never ever reduced or scrapped their dividend. So the clients still received their income. A year later, so 12 months later, people that were nursing a 50% loss had ended up with a 10% gain on BP because they bought more at a much lower price. So it was a cost averaging exercise that needed to be done. Now that is the difference fundamentally between someone that knows what they're doing and someone that doesn't. Because someone that doesn't know what they're doing, sadly, will probably on that day would have sold the stock.
And I suppose for you, you have to be aware of so many different things, of political, economic, healthcare, like you said with the pandemic. I mean, there are so many markets that you can tap into. I mean, how do you keep up, how do you keep up with all of that?
That's a good question. If I read all the reports that ever came into my inbox, I'd never get any work done. I have a very simple methodology that works for me. I get up in the morning, I read various publications, the FT, the Times. That gives me a good overview of things. I then, at 8 a.m., I'll open up my laptop and I'll check the pricing to see how the FTSE is doing. And then I have a watch list, which is very, very long. And that tells me how my stocks that I'm keeping an eye on are doing. Even in this crisis, the two stocks that have performed best are all related to Corona. So Novosit is a company that's doing a lot of testing, etc., etc. And I think they're up about 700% or something this year. And then there's a couple of others, Synergen, Gene Drive. These are all sort of related to healthcare. And these have been the best performers. So the point is, even in this time, a sad time and a very uncertain time, there's still companies that are flying through the roof. Zoom has had a huge rise in America. Amazon, there's still so many things that are going up, even in these times. So, I think if you're switched on, if you are well informed, you can still try and make the best of a bad situation.
And if someone is looking for cash flow during this time, which I think a lot of people are, is this a good time to be investing?
It's certainly surprised a lot of people, but actually it absolutely is a great time to be investing. There's a lot of companies that are, for want of a better word, on their knees, but they're still paying a good dividend. I mean, a lot of them have scrapped the dividend, or a lot of them may even halve their dividend. But let's say, for argument's sake, that the dividend is 11%. Even if they halved it, it's still 5.5%. Which is still pretty good return on the basis that money sitting in the bank account. I think we haven't quite got to negative interest rates, but we're almost there. It's pretty much zero. You're not going to get anything for keeping your money in the bank anyway. So to be honest with you, if you haven't invested before, or you have money sitting on the sidelines, this is the time now to be investing. Absolutely. You will actually, over the next 12 or 18 months, you will see good growth. And in the meantime, you're being paid to be patient with the income and the cash flow.
So it's not going to happen overnight, but it's important to stay patient and calm, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, the get rich quick, if that's what you're looking for, then I think I'll be very clear with people. I say, listen, if you're going to get rich, or you want to get rich yesterday, then I'm probably not the guy for you. Okay. So I wish you the best of luck. If you're prepared to play a long game and work hard at this, then absolutely, then I want to work with you. Look, we probably will have some very good winners, by the way, along the way. I think, but I think one of the other important things is to set expectations. They need to be managed right from the get-go. Everyone needs to understand that this is going to be a long game. There will be bumps along the way. Okay, you need to be prepared for that. But overall, if you stick with the strategy, if we're buying, let's say, 10 different good quality things and 7 or 8 of them succeed, then overall, over a year, 12, 18 months, 24 months, you're going to be up. That's a fact. So that's the key. Key is to buy good quality stuff, be diversified, and hold your metal. When things do get a little bit ropey from time to time.
Yeah. So we've seen other recessions before, and you've been through them, and I'm sure they follow certain patterns. Now, in your experience, do you think that at what point are we at right now, and sort of what are your predictions in terms of what's going to happen over the next 12-18 months?
The funny thing is, they're all actually quite different. So I'll tell you what I mean. The financial crisis was a systemic crisis where people were terrified, because if the banking system collapses, where do you even go from there? I mean, you don't even know how to deal with that. And there was a fear, certainly in the earlier part of that crisis, that the banking system could collapse. Then it moved on to a few banks did collapse, and then a few banks could have collapsed, but the government stepped in. So that was a different crisis. It was a case of, I can give you the stats now. GDP fell by about 8%, but it went on for a while, let's say 12 months. This one is a different kind of crisis because it's not a systemic crisis, it's a health crisis. A lot of deaths. Just in the UK now, I think we're up to about 13,000, which is obviously a huge toll in the space of barely a month. I think this one's a lot more painful, but it's shorter and sharper. So, and it's also because of the lockdown. So not only are we having these deaths, but because of the lockdown, the economy is completely shut down. Guidance from the government tells us that the lockdown will be done in 3 to 4 weeks. And so, of course, this part of the quarter, or the early part of Q2, has been heavily affected. But it's not terminal. It can still recover reasonably well. Sadly, there will be certainly companies within certain sectors that are probably going to go. But in general, it'd be interesting to see what happens after the lockdown. I personally think that the world has changed. I really do. I think people's behaviors have changed. I think that there's a lot of people that are going to will continue to work from home, or will start working from home more. There's certain roles where they will continue to go into the office. So I think that there's going to be a lot of office space that's going to become available over the next 12 months, because a lot of people are going to either start working from home full time, or they will start to work at least a couple of days a week from home.
Yeah, I would completely agree with you there. I think this is something that's been quite on topic in terms of now human behavior is going to change, and rather expanding the space that we have, it's really going to make people think that actually we can do without. And definitely, I think we'll see huge changes to the high street and to retail and to office space, certainly. So in terms of sort of planning for the future, is there anything that you would sort of recommend to be doing right now? And is there anything that you should say, stay away from this?
Yeah, I think look, I think there is always a temptation that things that have been hit very hard, there's always a temptation to jump into them. And there is a argument that, you know, the airlines, the restaurant sector, hotels, hospitality, there could be a decent rebound in some of these companies and sectors over the coming months. But if you want to take the safer approach, I would say that I think that these sectors are going to overall, I think they're going to be under pressure. So I think, buyer beware. You jump in at your own risk. I think there's better areas where you can invest your money safe in the knowledge that you're going to do okay. It doesn't have the same risks attached with it. So I think anything online related, I think anything related to packaging, paper, sadly, Dignity, who are the only listed provider of funerals, I think they're very busy. Sadly, I think they'll do quite well. And there's various other areas that I think you can probably look at, which are probably a lot more safer going forward. I mean, the thing is, we're in unprecedented times. So even when the lockdown is over, and we start to kind of, venture out of our homes, we don't really know how what world we're in now. I think social distancing will actually become normal. I think it could be the end of shaking hands. I think you could just have waves from about a meter away going forward. I don't know. I think hugs, kisses, apart from like with very, very close loved ones, I think we could see the end of all of that. Just human behavior. And then as a result of that behavior, they're doing things differently. So cigarettes, alcohol, if you're working from home, you're not going to the bar anymore, but the sales of cigarettes and alcohol from Sainsbury's could go up, you see. So the thing is only over the next 3 to 6 months, as we start to analyze how humans are behaving now, will we be able to say with some sort of assurance which are the areas that you want to be investing in. Also, I just think that generally retailers, so I mean like your Sainsbury's, your Tesco's, they're all listed. WM Morrison, they've all done very well out of this crisis, haven't they?
And do you tend to go by the numbers usually? You tend to look at the analysis first rather than saying, I've got a hunch on this one?
No, it's a bit of both. I mean, I think a lot of the time, actually, I'll probably go with the hunch and then almost back up the hunch with the numbers, rather than look at the numbers and kind of work it that way around. So I think that approach would probably usually be called top down. So it's a fundamental approach, meaning I like that company. I think it will do well. Okay, now let me look at the numbers and let me see what the other brokers are saying about it. What are the management doing? Another key indicator is always, are management buying the stock? If management are buying the stock, that's always a good sign.
Mm-hmm. All right. And I suppose for people that are self-employed right now, they can't get they can't get certain benefits from the government, or they're in a bit of a crisis. Is this probably something that they should be going forward with, or do they really need to just get some advice first?
Are you talking about the loans and things like that?
No, in terms of, so they've got, I know, for example, just by speaking to people, they're saying, we've got a lump sum of money, we need some cash flow. What's the best way that I can get some cash flow from the money that I have, rather than having it just sit in the bank and just using it up? Obviously, in terms of property, it might not be the best time to be doing that for various reasons. And it's just, I think for a lot of people, they might think it's still quite risky. So what would your advice be to someone that's looking for cash flow right now?
Well, if they're looking for cash flow, then certainly it's a good time to be entering the markets. There's a lot of good quality funds and blue chips, which aren't very, I would say, high risk. The prices have been absolutely battered, so there's not a lot of downside. So there's both growth and certainly income available. There's probably 20 to 25 stocks on the FTSE 100 that I think really they should be called a forever fund, meaning that you should always own them. Unilevers, Reckitt Benckiser's, Astra, Glaxo, the utility players, National Grid, Scottish and Southern, BP, Shell, the banks, a couple of the banks, British Airways. I mean, there's certain stocks and things that you should just generally always own. And if there's new money sitting on the sidelines, not quite sure what to do with it, it's certainly a good time to be entering.
So I think that we could sort of discuss all the different types of stocks for hours. I mean, it's really interesting that it follows the human behavior that's going on right now, and is so much of an element of predicting in terms of what's going to happen. And that's something that fascinates me, and I think certainly with our audience as well. But I think before investing and before starting to do it yourself, even though you might want to and you might have read up on something, it's really important to get some professional advice and get that guidance. So thank you, Salman. I think it's been really, really informative, and I think we'd really like to have another interview where we take a deep dive into exactly what's going on right now and how we can implement some changes to our viewers as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Speak soon. Take care.
If you want to keep up to date with all our latest content, then make sure to subscribe, hit us with a like on Facebook and Instagram, and remember, stay healthy and wealthy.